this is the biggest militarization of Manipur. Why after 2 months and some 10-15 days, the situation is still the same? And people dying, people whom you saw like getting shot, that takes a very, very serious toll. I've seen people, friends of mine, they have fainted on the spot, two of them. It took us around like 20 minutes just to slowly creep our way inside the vehicle, and all the mob had surrounded the car, the vehicle where we were inside. 5 of us were inside. Our mobile phones were snatched away from us. So as journalists, it is our obligation to get their side, of the story.
Hello and welcome to this special program by EastMojo. Over the past 3 months, we have seen numerous reporters, national, local and international, report over the ethnic violence in Manipur. However, the brunt has been felt by journalists who are working in the region day in and day out. What has been the experience so far? What has been the impact on their physical well-being, on their mental well-being? What is the condition that they are currently working in? Have they received the salaries on time? Have they been protected by administration or other officials as and when needed? What are the risks that have been involved and what are the risks that reporters have had to go through? To understand these and much more, we are joined by Paojel Chaoba, the executive editor of the Frontier Manipur, who is with us to share his experience. Paojel, thank you for joining us. First and foremost, welcome to Guwahati.
Thank you.
You and I go back a few years now. We have worked together in the past also. I remember speaking with you right on the first night of May 3 when Kalyan was in Chirachandpur.
Yes, you spoke.
And at that time, clearly none of us had an idea of how things were going to unfold. Just give us a brief sense of when did you realize, whether it was on the night of May 3rd itself or was it before? When did you realize that what you have on your hand is something of unprecedented proportions?
I mean, let me put it this way, like no one could have an inkling on what would actually be happening because we have never confronted or we have never experienced this sort of violence. Never. So, of course, Manipur is strife with violence in so many ways, agitations, demands, you know better than. But of these proportions that we have been experiencing, there is something which never accounted for. So I think both communities, including everyone who's working in the system, not only journalists, were completely in for a shock on what happened on May 3rd because we never knew that it will go out of hand. But after that, on the 4th, when we saw the burning, the problems, the issues, the shifting, the running, and more things all happening, we are at our wits' end because how many places you can cover? I mean, one violence would be happening in Imphal East, one would be happening in Imphal West, somewhere other districts. I mean, like there was a lot to cover, and we were suddenly like overwhelmed with all the violence that was happening. Minus the internet.
Exactly, and that's what I was getting into. It's one thing for the violence by May 4th, especially in Imphal, probably the biggest spate of violence happened within the first 2 days. Did you get a sense at that time that did you get a sense that this was not going to be limited only to Imphal? Or do you think this was at that time also, did you think that other parts of the state may not be as impacted? Or is it wrong to assume that other parts will not get impacted once Imphal saw that levels of violence?
Frankly speaking, I had no idea what would be happening. I was just keeping my fingers crossed that this violence would ebb down, I mean, it would slow down, and the police, the law enforcement system, and our other central forces were all there, would be controlling the situation in less than, I mean, like, it wouldn't take time to control situations because Manipur police is quite adept at controlling violent situations.
Disturbances.
Yes, yeah. So that we were thinking like, fine, this sort of violence is happening, but I believe in a couple of days it will be over. That's what we were feeling because we felt that the government would be a responsible one. We felt that this police would be doing a good job, but on the flip side, I forgot the exact date, but it might be 4th or 5th when the head of the police, the DGP, his house was under attack.
I think it was the fifth year.
Fifth, no? Yeah. So that's what happened. So if the person who is on top of the chain to protect lives and the public property, when he cannot fend for his own,
House, yeah.
then it's a free for all for whatever violence that would occur, will occur. That was a starting point. I mean, when we begin to realize.
So, Chaoba, you have over 2 decades of experience, but as we were discussing earlier, that you have seen violence in the state, but you have that violence had a particular nature, which was usually against the center or the state. It would be people against authority, whether it was the decades-long struggle of Iram Sharmila or even the struggles for ILP back in 2016 when we were talking about the economic blockade. But even then, it was against the economic blockade was the closest we came to dividing Manipur, right? In the sense that the valley wanted it, the hills were opposing it, but it never descended to regular people baying for each other's blood. This time that happened, for example, and you have seen the violence firsthand. Tell us, what I also wanted to understand from you is, within the first few days, as you said that while in the beginning you didn't have an idea as to how bad situation would be, you also saw that after 1 week also things were no closer to settling down. You had a very unique way of doing journalism at that time, and this is something that you also always do, at least for your Facebook lives, which are pretty popular. You started just hitting the ground zero as soon as possible, and you just had a mobile and a mic in hand, sometimes not even a mic. So you just record and start speaking. How much of a challenge was it to reach these spots, but how were you actually sharing this with with internet ban and all? What lens did you have to go to make sure that people were getting to see what you were doing?
Let me put it this way. When we are of the digital age now, you and me, we're all sitting over here, you can just check out what misinformation, disinformation. Actually, you can verify the news reports, you can get the predictions, you can get anything on your phone. So imagine when everything is just cut down and you're back into the dark ages. Over time, when you have to make a phone call and you don't even get the numbers because you can't download it from the Google Drive. So in an instant, we were in the complete darkness.
Handicapped.
Very much handicapped. In such a way that we cannot know what is happening exactly. One thing is that.
I remember because there were times you would call me to know what was happening in the other side of the Imphal.
Right, because we couldn't get much at the internet, and without internet, we are so much used. This is a part of our lives now. So when suddenly that is pulled out by the system, which we feel that should not have been done in the first place. I did a PIL on it, of course, but coming back to the point, let us say that a correspondent has to send news from Bishnupur to Imphal. So there's a fairly large, long distance. So that time he can just send it over on the phone. It will take hardly 5 minutes, even edit it. But he has to travel at least now 50 kilometers.
And a risky travel.
Yeah, and a risky travel. He does all his violence along the way. I mean, you have people stopping from going either way. There are central forces, there are police asking you. I mean, it is tough even to move around in Imphal. But even, I believe, it was tougher for us district-wise, this correspondence. I feel they had a very, very tough time in trying to report. But that was where some of the issues were happening, which is currently going on now. Mm-hmm.
So, now coming back to one thing that we were discussing again earlier, that and this is something that we had touched in our talk about the Editors Guild also. Conflict is probably the most complex thing to report about, right? Especially when you try to be balanced. Now you are talking about a lot of Imphal-based reporters who have not dealt with anything of that magnitude ever before. They are more of what we call cub reporters or beat reporters. So from going on to writing about reporting on PR or attending press conferences, all of a sudden you are now reporting day in day out about conflict. What, according to you, were the areas where the local, the journalists that you were working with, Imphal especially, what were the biggest challenges that they were facing, and what were the biggest things that they were suffering, with, whether it was verifying information or whether it was following orders? Because let's be clear, newsroom editors also made it very clear that you have to do stories in a particular way. So what according to you were some of the places where the local reporters were struggling, which nobody could see? or nobody cared about?
It was the lack of communication, number one, but it depends on if you're working for a paper hard copy, if you're working for an electronic television, this TV, or you're on a digital web page. So if you're operating as a web portal, of course, you need the proper infrastructure, you need internet.
Exactly.
So when the internet is gone, the Frontier Manipur obviously handicapped, as you said, still is handicapped in more ways than one. However, the print journalists, they also have to produce the papers.
Exactly.
So if you don't have internet, how will you get the other paper, this information to fill up the pages?
Exactly.
There was one thing where I filled the print at the copies, and the editors suffered a lot because the only way of getting the internet was the Department of Information and Public Relations, only one office in Manipur. So everyone was coming over there, trying to download, trying to upload, but that takes a huge amount of time, as the system that was given to us was not adequate.
Exactly. And file sizes can also be like a Facebook Live can be a few GB.
And if you're trying to send even a photo, it's, let's say you're the correspondent of some national paper or something like that. So you're getting back with your videos, you're getting back with your stories, you're coming back with the good things or the bad things that you have to tell. So imagine when you takes you like around 2-3 minutes to send one photo, trying to compress and all this footage.
A video file, for example.
That took a big amount of time, and for us locally, we were also stranded, left in the dark. We were dropping basically all the media houses, the Notice Affairs, us, and all of the digital web portals. We had suffered a severe setback at those times, but communication was one problem also.
So this is where this is something that I also wanted to discuss with you. It's one thing to do it for a week. You 2 months and 5 days, as you said, before you took the first break because you could not handle it anymore.
I couldn't.
At what point did you realize that and this I'm asking on a more as a personal capacity, but it must be getting tiring, right? And there is also a lot of fear involved because in the first few weeks, for example, you didn't even have a jacket. At least now you see press people wearing sort of bulletproof jackets, but for the first month it was not. It was perfectly considered. Journalists were dispensable that way, right? So it took 1 month for you to even get jackets, for example.
2 months.
Exactly.
3 months. 2 and 3 months.
So in these circumstances, and we know the salaries that we work for, how do you convince yourself to wake up in the morning and do that kind of work day in, day out? Because even as journalists, we do different stories at different times, right? But for the past 3 months, your life at least has been absolutely, there is nothing else. I don't think you've done on any other story except what has been happening in the violence. So, what kind of mental toll does it take? Going back home, family, stuff like that.
It's not only for me personally, but for the other my friends, journalists. I believe that we just had to get a first-hand account of what is happening, and that coverage, of course, is dangerous because there are people shooting, people throwing stones or mock bombs. You have to have various situations which you can encounter, either with state, either with these villagers, or you're being shot upon. So since May 3rd, this has been going on a daily basis, as you have known. The violence got worse, and the situation led to such so several deaths which have happened, 160, and now I don't know how the toll must have gone to 180. And as I said, we are getting overwhelmed with the news because one person who is on the ground will not be able to cover the entire situation, a first-hand account.
Even if they do it for a day, they can't repeat it every day for day in, day out.
They can't. And the areas where Khamen Lok, where 9 people were killed, I've never been to that place, even if I am from Manipur. So there are various areas that you have to go and search, and there is no Google location or search, as the internet is down.
Exactly.
So going there is another one big issue, but trying to get a first-hand account, you will be stopped by police, you'll be stopped by the security, but you have to trudge in, and at the same time, you're taking a big risk Because
Exactly.
if you're going inside on your own volition, that means you're responsible for your own safety. And as you said, there is no bulletproof jackets, and we don't even have helmets, but we are armed only with our mobile phones and cameras. So in that situation where we are shot upon, there's sporadic shooting happening here and there, and when you're directly in the area where all the bullets are just flying past your head, I mean, and people dying, people whom you saw like getting shot, that takes a very, very serious toll. I've seen people, friends of mine, they have fainted on the spot. Two of them. There's one electronic channel also, and one people whose cameras got smashed. And one particular incident where I was involved in was in Kuki area near the this Army 57 Mountain Division. There was a bunker busting program. So we thought we'll just get a first-hand account of what is happening on the Kuki side. I know that we were taking a risk, fine. I know we could be branded as stupid also, that we were taking a risk. But fine, at least the army accompanied us. So we met the people over there, and the village chief, who was a Kuki, gave us an invitation to interview some women who were just wanted to protest. So as journalists, it is our obligation to get their side, of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we went over there, first all the people, the women were sitting with banners and all, but suddenly we were taken by surprise, and they asked us which papers we represented, and said that Mighty Media is biased, and you please go back. But at the end we were heavily mobbed, and it took us around like 20 minutes just to slowly creep our way inside the vehicle, and all the mob had surrounded the car, the vehicle where we were inside. 5 of us were inside. Our mobile phones were snatched away from us, and I feel that it was quite lucky for us that we were able to get out of that particular situation, which I would not want any journalist to be experiencing. So that takes a lot of toll also on your mental status. I mean, the string is it's one quite pretty tight.
Exactly.
And that reflects on your family life and your, like your children also. They'll be thinking if my husband, my father, or my son is going to come back unscathed.
Exactly.
And one of these times, few times when even the Meitei mother or some elder will just, touch your head and smell and take a small bite on you. This is a customary that they are just giving you a good wish to return unscathed, sort of tradition of ours. So that time, the family members started doing that. For the rest of the cases where you have said the ILP issue, whatever issue we have covered, nothing of this sort happened.
Exactly.
But this time we were getting that particular treatment from our parents. It's not on us, not only journalists, but also our families.
Now, which is what we'll switch to a different topic, but this is the last question in this realm. You have taken pride in the fact that even though you are based out of Imphal, you have reported from across Manipur, right? Like you spent so much time in places like Chandel, for example, for previous stories, or in Churachandpur, So you have travelled freely in Manipur mostly.
Yeah.
Did it feel? What was the feeling like? Was it weird? Did it hurt you, or was it just the reality that national media people, for example, even international media, could arrive in Imphal on day one and they could travel freely in the state, relatively easily move from Meitei areas to Cook areas and vice versa, while you could not. Even you are not going to do that.
Yeah.
So how did it feel as a you can answer it as a professional also, but otherwise also.
I feel that this is a very awkward situation for a journalist, because you have to cover both sides. And I said, as I coming from one community, is not allowed to cover things on the other side. For that, we may have some gray areas, but that is still happening, and vice versa with the cookie issues. But still, I think the Meitei media have carried all their press releases, what has been happening, pretty decently enough. But we have been denied that right to get a first-hand account on what is happening, unless you have a death wish or something like that. But it is a part of what do you say, professional hazard, the one incident that I talk about. But if you say that as being MIT, that is the issue which is not only happening with me, but with others whose homes are there in Chuchampur. I have a home in Imphal, but I believe those people who have a home in More, at Kangpokpi or Chuchanpur, they are the ones who are left high and dry. They are the ones who are crying. Yes, our lives are starting from zero. That is why it hurts me the most. Being a journalist, I have seen all that. At least fine, I am paid meager amount as far as all the other journalists in Manipur. But to see the pain and suffering of those people who have been made homeless, I mean, okay, fine, it's for the other community also. But we're not getting a first-hand account by ourselves. Exactly. It's only the national media and other medias, international, okay, fine with that. But we are not getting any access. So we have to make our peace with that. But from what we have seen, there's so much left lacking to report, that where we could do, where we could at least correct. I mean, with the internet down, I'm coming again to that. So there are so many factors which are happening, which we are confronting. It is our daily demons that we are facing now.
No, and now we come to the conflict itself. Like, I mean, if you look at the timeline, May 3rd violence begins, and one of the May 5, one of the first footages we had on May 5, at least when we were in Churachandpur, was of the army, drove thousands of army personnel coming into Churachandpur. So, while the center may have been found wanting in its response, let's not beat around the bush. The army was there within 36 hours of the violence breaking, right?
Yeah.
Now, for anybody who is still unfamiliar with the map of Manipur, the violence area, whether it is Kangpokpi, whether it is Bishnupur, these are very small areas in terms of the area size that we are talking about. Within that, we are also not talking about like multi-million. They're not millions and millions of people. The whole population of Manipur, at least by census, is under 3 million, just around 3 million. Now, even if we say half the population is not involved, we are talking about like a little over 1 million people who are caught in the crossfires. You have been very, very vocal that it is not a community issue, that it's not a Kuki versus Meitei issue, but it is an agenda-driven war. And your experiences, if anything, have only confirmed to you what you believe, that this is not between communities. There is an agenda. Why do you say that? And secondly, what have you seen on the ground in all these days that have helped you come to that point where you say that it's not about communities? It's because these communities have never been at each other's throats, at least this manner. So,
very interesting question. So I'll come back to my last statement, the question you asked me. So I stopped reporting from the ground in, I would say, like 2 months and 15 days or so, because it was a daily thing which was happening every day. Shootings, where this place, how many people have been killed. Of course, we can get the statistics from the Meitei side, but it was something which we are groping in the dark for casualties or fatalities on the other side. And with all the government issues of is Article 355 being imposed or not, and some, basic press releases, press statements coming out from the government which do not make any sense. And mind you that we were not allowed to ask questions
during the press conferences.
But that is,
but if I remember correctly, that is something that is very common in Manipur. People don't ask, except you, not many people ask questions during conferences anyways. So,
but this is a time when you have to ask a lot of questions. And those people who are the representatives, it may be anybody, were just saying no comments in many instances. Now, coming back to the earlier statement, it's like when those things keep repeating itself, killings, violence, PRs, the failure of the system. So I began introspecting. So by the second month and 15 days, I posted on my wall that I'm just going to do some more digging, some insights that I needed to find out, because it was happening as a daily routine.
Yeah, exactly.
Our mental, we are in a very bad mental state after all this. Not only journalists, the whole of the communities including. So I thought that why is this being allowed to happen? As you have said, this is the biggest militarization of Manipur.
In
We have
recent days,
nearly about, I'd say, 80 to 1 lakh central forces, you name it. The Assam Rifle, the army is already there, the BSF is there, the new ITBF is there, the RAF is there, and
CRPF is there.
the CRPF is there. And along with that, 35,000 of straight,
40,000, yeah, about
something like that,
40,000.
give or take. So they are always there who are very experts at handling any sort of situation. Manipur police commandos and Manipur police, they have seen many violent situations and they are quite good at keeping the law and order situation even calm. After even so some skirmishes, some violence have broken out. But why I began to question myself is why after 2 months and some 10, 15 days, the situation is still the same. The status quo is there. So why is happening? Because you may note that there are only so less village defense volunteers who are guarding the peripheral areas, the western, northern, southern, but most of the problems are happening along the Bishnupur district areas and the Imphal West, part of Imphal West and Imphal East. So that we began to understand because troops were coming in every day. Planes, buses planes were bringing in hundreds of to thousands of troops throughout the night. So it was the biggest militarization. So only some few, I would say, let's say let's say in hundreds maybe, or at the most, let's say a big figure of 1,000. So they are the village volunteers who are working overtime with the Maira Paibis to block whatever problems might come in the peripheral areas. And of course, we are being attacked. That is something that people can see even now. So we thought that the army, the central paramilitary forces have got around 70,000 troops on the ground then. And the military, the army, the central forces moves with such precision that where can you not go in 6 hours time in the state of Manipur where violence is happening. So if some 100 or 1,000 of people can keep the borders in check or with the local volunteers, you put 10,000 army or like CRPF or BSF in some of these areas which is like not less than like 20 kilometers area.
Exactly. Do you think the government is making it sound like a far bigger problem than it actually is? Or will that be a wrong way to look at it? Do you think the problem is as severe between communities?
See, there are certain instances which I can cite where we feel that something is happening. For example, 3 RAF, I have rechristened them this action force, rapid action force. 3 of them were caught trying to burn down a cookie.
I remember that one.
Sorry, no, a Kabui.
Kabui Naga.
Yeah, so exactly. The show was there, but that show was being manned by a Maitai Pangal.
The beef shop.
The beef shop.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was one strange incident when they just came on the ground and they're supposed to protect the people, they keep their property safe, but they're just doing the opposite. So wonder of wonders. So if this is a thing that RAF can do, we can expect something which may be a larger agenda of sorts, something being planned, a policy happening, something with the security advisor having a hand in many ways involved. So we have to question all of these things. But coming back to your question, after this meeting with some people and getting down to the basics of it, and the situation not resolving itself with the silence of the parliament, with the silence of our MPs, and we have no idea where our government, the leaders, elected leaders are. They're just making 1-time, 2-time appearances on certain occasions.
Which is where one thing that I wanted to know from you, in the journalist community or whether in your own experience, did you find it surprising like that from the day of the violence, why has it been so difficult for BJP MLAs? Let's not forget the alliance has 55 out of 60, right? If I'm not wrong. Why has it been so difficult for even BJP to get its Maitai and Kuki MLAs together even for a press conference?
At the present situation, I believe that this is something which is beyond the ambit of the state government, to be told. But however, even if some issues that happen, let me go back to the first question. If you can control the fire in time,
exactly,
then it can just like assess this damage, try to heal the wounds, and at least law and order should be there, which can be done.
But that is clearly not the intention.
So when the government is taking a very big silent step, and it is reflecting on the way that the violence is being handled of sorts. Still now, we have seen a couple of yesterday, day after before yesterday, around the Bishop, yeah, and the rally, and before that, farmers have been shot. One Mati Pangal was shot, and I believe that these casualties are happening. It's not stopping.
Exactly.
So why is this allowed to go on? Does the Indian government have a plan that to keep the pot boiling, for some other gains? Because we feel that if this is a political situation where communities are at war against each other, I will quote Professor Bimola Koizam on this. He said there will always be a political agenda, a political objective of gains. He told me this in an interview when I asked him the similar question. So I believe that the state is playing it has an agenda of sorts, maybe, perhaps, who knows. But why?
Exactly. And just last question. I mean, apart from the insane amount of trolling that you have had to go through, because that's what we are. That's the modern world we live in. You had a particularly harrowing moment, which you turned it into a joke, where the beheading of
David Thicke, yeah,
exactly, and some people tried to, especially on Twitter and Facebook, tried to make it sound like you were the person who had beheaded that person. And we were laughing because if every bald man seems the same to you, then please confuse me with Bruce Willis next time. But jokes apart, like as somebody who's been at the front line, do you feel threatened that that there is a good chance that all it takes is one person to be angry at the wrong time, right?
For the trolling on social media, it's just like water on a duck's back. No?
It will be
like that. You have to take it like that. Otherwise, if you allow yourself deeply, into those comments, you're already tired, but you're doing your job nevertheless. You're not paid well enough to do many jobs. Comfortably.
Exactly.
So in this particular situation, you're doing this work for the love of the profession, to inform others, and at least to have to be able to form an opinion where people and the communities can come back, and to focus on the areas where the government is going wrong, where the civil organizations are doing what they are doing, what are the other communities saying about this. We need to keep them informed. So that is the objective, what we have to do. But this is not the only situation that we have dealt with, because as journalists, we have to be at least a little bit accepting that anything can happen to you anytime, and we are not armed. We don't carry pistols or anything. We are just armed with our pens and our mobiles. But when you think of it, you have to think like this, we are all marked for that one way or other. But if you are going out the way that you believe in, it's much better than dying of what you say, liver cirrhosis and other different diseases. I mean,
only a journalist can talk about liver cirrhosis.
I'm just using an example, but as you can understand, but it'll be best to go out in a way for what you believe in. And this is not the first time, but you have to take at least some calculated risk.
And throughout this violence, have you been in touch with your Kuki colleagues, and what has been how has been your experience, staying in touch or talking to them?
See, I have journalist friends. We talk to verify reports, and because you cannot go inside there.
Exactly.
So sometimes we also use their correspondents' help, because they are still correspondents in some ways, and the chief ministers, the civil organizations, given the issue, they are saying that we only have issues with people who are coming from across the border, but not with the people who are already originally belonging to Manipur. That's what the statements of every civil
But on the
organization
ground,
say.
it has been become very different. Like how, like when this rhetoric is built up, it becomes like there's no way to know who's who, right? Like at least from the government side, the way the CM has handled it, he might say that we are only problem with the ones who are outsiders, but you are not identifying them at all, right? You are clubbing everybody as the same. So, anyways,
But is it like you're just cursing the darkness when you should try lighting up a candle?
exactly.
So some people may not be allowing you to light up that candle to
That is what
dispel
you've
the
been.
darkness.
That is what you have been saying. That
Yes.
there's a reason why the darkness is continuing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you so much, Chaoba.
Pleasure,
And
Amit.
it's been a
Pleasure.
pleasure indeed. Stay tuned to EastMojo. We'll be back with more. And thank you for watching.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to East Mojo. For any queries, put them down in the comments section below and press on the bell icon for notifications.